I came back early wanting to surprise them for Christmas. Instead, I found my wife Evelyn crying silently on the cold balcony, staring at the tree lights we put up just last week. Inside, my son Dan was laughing, sharing expensive wine I'd been saving with his in-laws, as if the whole world was perfect. No one even knew I was home. But standing there in the shadows, I suddenly understood everything. Before the sun came up, I changed every lock on the house and cut the heat to their rooms. My name is Richard Peterson. I'm 70 years old, and this is how I started taking back my life. The fishing trip ended a day early. A cold front blew in off the lake, chasing me and my buddies back towards shore. They were eager to get home to wives, kids, grandkids. Me, not so much. My first wife, Martha, passed nearly 20 years ago, God rest her soul. And Evelyn, my second wife, well, I wasn't always sure she missed me when I was gone. Still, it was Christmas Eve. A surprise visit felt right. Maybe see a genuine smile on Dan's face for a change. Turning onto the long gravel driveway leading up to the lake house, my heart swelled with pride like it always did. I built this place not just with money earned from 40 years busting my hump in construction, but with my own 2 hands on weekends. Martha would have loved it. I poured everything into this house, everything into giving Dan the life I never had after my old man took off. Maybe giving him everything was the first mistake. Then I saw them. 2 cars I didn't recognize parked bold as brass right by the front steps. A new Lexus, an equally shiny BMW, Victor and Isabella Rossi's cars, Dan's in-laws. Music thumped from the living room windows loud enough to hear over the wind whistling through the pines. Laughter, too loud, boisterous laughter. They were here, unannounced. Again. Classic Rossi move. Always treating my home like a free hotel, conveniently located whenever they felt like escaping the city. I killed the engine, parked my old pickup behind the dense spruce trees near the gate. Habit, I guess, trying to maintain some element of surprise even now. A prickle of unease started low in my gut. I should have told them I was heading back early, but the thought of maybe, just maybe, catching a glimpse of the happy family I thought we were kept me quiet. I walked around to the back kitchen door, knew it'd be unlocked. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of roasting meat, but not Evelyn's usual honey-glazed turkey. Something richer, fancier, and beneath that the faint, acrid tang of something burnt. Quietly, I slipped inside the house I knew like the back of my hand, onto the familiar oak floorboards I'd laid myself. I crept towards the doorway connecting the kitchen to the great room. The laughter was clearer now. Sophia, my daughter-in-law, her voice high-pitched, carrying that edge of triumph she always seemed to have. Dan, my son. His voice deeper, but mirroring her amusement, and the Rossis joining in. I was about to step out, call out a Christmas greeting, when I froze. Through the gap where the door was slightly ajar, I saw her, Evelyn, standing alone on the wide wrap-around deck, overlooking the frozen lake. The biting December wind whipped strands of gray hair across her face. She wore only a thin cardigan pulled tight around her thin shoulders, shivering. The glow from the Christmas lights strung along the deck railing illuminated her face. And I saw the tears. Silent tears rolling down her cheeks, disappearing into the collar of her sweater. She wiped them away quickly, furtively, looking out at the twinkling lights on the huge pine tree I'd decorated just the week before. Why was she out there alone, freezing? Why was she crying on Christmas Eve? My gaze shifted back inside to the warm, brightly lit living room. Dan was clinking glasses with his father-in-law, Victor. Sophia snuggled against Dan's side, giggling, as her mother, Isabella, dramatically recounted some story. On the low mahogany coffee table sat glasses filled with deep red wine, my Chateau Margaux, the 69 I'd been saving for a truly special occasion, and a half-eaten platter of delicate pastries from that ridiculously expensive French bakery downtown. They were having a party. Warm, cozy, oblivious. while the woman who shared my name stood shivering just feet away, separated by a pane of glass and an ocean of indifference. It was like she wasn't even there, like she wasn't part of their celebration. My heart pounded a dull, heavy beat against my ribs. That cold unease spread, turning icy. I stayed hidden behind the wall, straining to hear. Just being dramatic as usual. Isabella Rossi's voice cut through the laughter, sharp-laced with contempt. Let her stand out there and pout through Christmas if she wants. Honestly, she just dampens the mood, doesn't she? I waited, holding my breath, waited for Dan to defend her, to say something, anything, to protect the woman who was his father's wife, the woman who'd been kind to him even when he barely acknowledged her presence. But he just gave a weak, uncomfortable chuckle. "Aw, Mom, come on, don't say that," he mumbled, clearly unwilling to challenge his mother-in-law. Then he quickly changed the subject, asking Victor about his golf handicap. Sophia didn't even pretend. A small, cruel smile played on her lips. She glanced towards the deck, her eyes glittering with malice. "Your mother's right, Dan. Some people just enjoy being miserable." I couldn't breathe. The air felt thick, heavy, unbreathable. The anger wasn't hot and explosive. It was a cold, sharp certainty settling deep in my bones. I finally saw it. Understood why Evelyn had seemed so quiet lately, so withdrawn. Understood the forced smiles, the hollow reassurances that everything was fine. They were isolating her. My son, my daughter-in-law, her parents. Isolating my wife in my own house. The house built with my sweat, my money, my dreams. And Dan, my boy, the one I'd sacrificed everything for, had chosen a side. He'd chosen the pretty, manipulative wife and her greedy family over the quiet woman who'd shared my life after Martha was gone. I couldn't storm in there. Not now. Yelling, confronting them, would only make Evelyn's position worse, give them ammunition to paint me as the unreasonable old man. No. This required something else. Something calculated. I backed away, silently melting back through the kitchen and out the door I'd come in. The wind hit me biting cold, but it was nothing compared to the ice forming around my heart. I got back in my truck, didn't look back at the warm lights spilling from the windows. Tonight, Richard Peterson wasn't going home. Tonight, Richard Peterson needed a plan. That house was mine. The rules were mine. And I was about to remind everyone exactly who was in charge. Starting at dawn, I drove away from the lake house, my lake house numb. The image of Evelyn shivering on the deck burned into my mind, Dan's easy laughter, echoing like a betrayal. I didn't go back to my small apartment in the city, too many potential questions, too many people who might know Dan or Sophia. Instead, I found a generic motel off the highway, the kind with thin walls and flickering fluorescent lights. The anonymity felt right. Sitting on the edge of the stiff, unfamiliar bed, the motel room smelling faintly of stale smoke and disinfectant, the whole ugly scene replayed itself. Evelyn's silent tears, the way she flinched almost imperceptibly when Isabella Rossi's voice carried outside Dan's forced joke to change the subject. Sophia's triumphant smirk. It wasn't just tonight, was it? This had been building. Evelyn hadn't been herself for months, quieter, thinner, avoiding eye contact. I'd chalked it up to winter blues, maybe missing Martha during the holidays. Fool. And Dan always needing something. A temporary loan for a can't-miss investment opportunity, help covering an unexpected business expense, a down payment boost for a better car. Always with a plausible story. Always emphasizing how it was just temporary until things picked up. Sophia's sly comments about how the lake house was really too big for just Evelyn and me. How maybe it was time for the younger generation to manage things, how property taxes must be such a burden at my age. It all clicked into place now, a sickening mosaic of manipulation and greed. They saw me as a wallet, not a father, not a husband, just an obstacle with a bank account. But anger without proof was just noise. I needed facts, cold, hard numbers. I pulled my laptop from its worn leather case, set it up on the cheap laminate desk, and logged into my primary bank account, the one tied to the construction company I'd sold 5 years ago. My personal finances were separate, largely managed through investments, but I'd given Dan a supplementary credit card on my main account years ago for emergencies. And Sophia got one too after they married, supposedly for household expenses related to the lake house when they visited. I rarely checked the detailed statements, trusting my son. Another mistake. I clicked open the credit card activity for the last 6 months. My breath caught in my throat. Page after page scrolled by detailing a lifestyle I barely lived myself. Charges from Michelin-starred restaurants downtown, $300–400 a pop, sometimes twice a week. Purchases from Saks, Neiman Marcus, Bloomingdale's, thousands spent on designer names I barely recognized, clearly Sophia's shopping sprees. Weekend trips to Napa, Sonoma, Aspen, $2–3,000 for hotels, flights, meals. A $5,000 charge at Tiffany's just last month. Sophia's birthday, maybe. Large cash withdrawals, $500–1,000 at a time, from ATMs near the city's most exclusive shopping districts and once near that new casino resort that opened upriver. Payments to a luxury car dealership, not my dealership, the one Dan and Sophia used. Were they using my card to pay for their damned Lexus lease? The dates stung the most. A $1,500 charge at that trendy steakhouse the same week Dan had called sounding desperate, needing help covering an unexpected tax bill. A $2,000 weekend getaway the very weekend he claimed he was working overtime to catch up on bills. I started adding it up quickly, scribbling numbers on the motel notepad. $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 in just 6 months. On things they absolutely did not need. Things they lied to get. The initial shock turned into a slow burn, a cold, hard rage settling in my gut. I felt like the world's biggest fool. How could I have been so blind? How could Dan, my own son, participate in this charade? The money hurt, yes, seeing my hard-earned retirement savings frittered away on nonsense. But it was the deception that cut deepest. The casual ease with which they lied, took my money, laughed with their in-laws, while my wife cried in the cold. I gripped the cheap plastic mouse so hard my knuckles turned white. They hadn't just disrespected Evelyn, they'd disrespected me, my work, my entire life. I meticulously downloaded the statements, saving them to a secure flash drive. Every charge, every date, every lie. This wasn't just about hurt feelings anymore. This was evidence, ammunition, and I intended to use it. Staring at the downloaded bank statements, the numbers blurring slightly, fatigue finally setting in. I leaned back in the cheap motel chair. It wasn't just the recent spending spree that galled me. It was the pattern. Now that the blinders were off, I saw it stretching back years. Dan always seemed to have a cash flow problem just before a big commission check was due, needing a bridge loan, just $5,000. Dad, I'll pay you back next month. The repayment rarely materialized or was quickly followed by another urgent request. Sophia too, though her approach was different, softer, more insidious. Richard, wouldn't it be wonderful if the grandkids had more room to run around when they visit? Implying my city apartment wasn't good enough. Or, this big house must cost a fortune to maintain. Maybe Dan could help you manage the upkeep, suggesting my incompetence. Little digs, little hints, always planting seeds of doubt about my ability, my judgment always positioning themselves as helpful concerned. And Dan, my own son, swallowed it whole. Anytime I gently questioned a lavish purchase Sophia made or hinted that maybe they should live a little more within their means, Dan would jump to her defense. Mom, you don't understand. Sophia needs nice things for her image, her networking events. Or Dad, she found an incredible deal, you wouldn't believe it. He'd make me feel cheap, old-fashioned, out of touch. He'd choose her narrative over my quiet concern every single time. How many thousands had slipped through my fingers over the years, justified by vague promises and manipulated guilt? The $86,000 from the last 5 years was just the tip of the iceberg, I was sure of it. The picture was sickeningly clear now. They hadn't suddenly become greedy. They'd been playing a long game, chipping away at my resources, making me feel like their safety net, while secretly resenting my very presence, my control over what they clearly felt was already theirs. Enough reminiscing. Anger wouldn't fix this, planning would. First things first, secure the fortress. I knew the lake house was mine, legally bought and paid for, long before Evelyn came along, and certainly before Sophia sunk her claws into Dan. But seeing their audacity, I needed the reassurance of black and white. Back in my city apartment later that morning, ignoring the blinking light on the answering machine, I went straight to my fireproof safe. Tucked away beneath old stock certificates and Martha's jewelry box was the thick manila envelope containing the house deeds. My name, Richard Peterson, sole owner. Clear, undeniable. A wave of grim satisfaction washed over me. They couldn't touch the house itself, not legally, not yet anyway. Then I pulled out my will, the one drafted by my old lawyer friend Harrison 5 years back. Just as I remembered. Dan, primary beneficiary, inheriting the house, the investments, the bulk of my estate. My stomach churned looking at his name. That document felt like another betrayal, now a reward for his disloyalty. This would need changing immediately. But first I had a house to reclaim. Dawn was just breaking, painting the sky in pale shades of gray and pink as I pulled the pickup back into the woods near my driveway, concealing it again. The lake house stood silent, dark against the early morning light. No cars were moving, no lights flickered inside. They were sleeping soundly after their little celebration, no doubt unaware the ground was shifting beneath their feet. I moved quickly, quietly, years of construction work, teaching me how to be efficient even in the cold. I had the new lock sets ready, high-security ones bought from a specialty store, not the cheap stuff from the big box retailers. Starting with the back door, the one I'd slipped through just hours before, I worked methodically. The old cylinder came out, the new one went in. Click. Secure. Then the front door, the heavy oak one Martha had loved. Same process, precise, deliberate. Click. Secure. The garage side door too. Click. Secure. 3 new locks, keyed alike, my keys only. Inside the house was still dim, the air thick with the stale smell of their party, leftover food, wine. Maybe even cigarette smoke, judging by the faint odor near the fireplace. Disgust welled up, but I pushed it down. Focus. I went to the main thermostat in the hallway, the digital one I'd installed last year. I didn't turn the heat off completely. That might cause problems with the pipes in this weather. But I lowered the temperature significantly, down to 60 degrees, maybe 58, in the guest wing where the Rossies were likely staying. Then I accessed the settings, locking the controls with a passcode only I knew. Let them feel a chill. Let them wonder why their comfort was suddenly interrupted. It wasn't about cruelty, it was about control. My house, my rules, my temperature. I didn't linger, didn't check on Evelyn, didn't peek into the living room disaster area. Every second I stayed increased the risk of being discovered. I slipped back out, locking the new back door behind me, melting back into the pre-dawn shadows. Phase 1 complete. Now for Phase 2. Back in the anonymous safety of the motel room, the weak morning sun filtering through the cheap curtains, I poured myself another cup of lukewarm coffee and picked up my phone. It was time to call James Harrison. Jim and I went way back. Handled all the legal work for my company for 30 years, saw me through the sale negotiated contracts that set me up for retirement. He was sharp, loyal, old school, knew me better than almost anyone except maybe Martha. He answered on the second ring, his voice already alert despite the early hour. Harrison. Jim, it's Richard Peterson. Richard, good to hear from you. Everything all right up at the lake? Thought you weren't back till tomorrow. Plans changed, Jim. Something's come up, something serious. I need to see you today as soon as possible. Harrison didn't ask unnecessary questions, didn't pry. He knew my tone. I understood urgency when he heard it. Of course, Richard. My 9 o'clock canceled. Can you be at my office then? I'll be there. Is it something I need to prepare for specifically? Bring your standard retainer agreement, Jim, and maybe dust off the files related to property law and family disputes. A brief pause on the other end. Understood, Richard. See you at 9. He hung up. I let out a long breath. Setting the legal wheels in motion felt good concrete. Jim would know exactly how to handle this. He'd seen plenty of ugly business deals, plenty of partnership betrayals. This family drama, while personally devastating, was just another type of hostile takeover attempt. And Jim Harrison knew how to fight those. I glanced at the clock. Still hours until 9. Hours for Dan and Sophia and their freeloading family to wake up, find themselves locked in or out, find the heat mysteriously lowered. Hours for the panic to set in. Good. Let them panic. Let them wonder what happened. Let them realize the gravy train had just hit a brick wall at full speed. The call came just after 8:30, right on schedule. I was already halfway to Harrison's office, cruising down the highway, the early morning sun glinting off the hood of the truck. Caller ID showed Dan's number. I let it ring twice before picking up, keeping my voice level neutral. Peterson. Dad. What the hell is going on? Dan's voice was tight, high-pitched, bordering on panic. We can't get the front door unlocked. My key won't work. Sophia's key won't work either. And it's freezing in here. Did the furnace break? Is that why you came back early? Oh, the furnace is working just fine, son, I replied calmly. Maybe not set as high as you'd like, though. As for the locks, I had them changed this morning. New keys. My keys. What changed the locks? Why would you do that without telling us? We were planning on going out for breakfast. Now we're stuck. And Isabella keeps complaining about the cold. Tell Isabella to put on a sweater, I said flatly. As for why, well, it's my house, Dan. I decided it was time for a security upgrade. You decided? Security upgrade. Dad. We're your family. What are you talking about? His voice rose, laced with frustration and disbelief. Are you okay? Did something happen on your trip? I'm perfectly fine, I assured him. Never better, in fact. Just had a bit of an epiphany about security and hospitality. Hospitality? What does that mean? It means the uninvited house guests need to make other arrangements. Other arrangements. Dad, that's Sophia's parents you're talking about. They're our guests. They were never my guests, Dan, I corrected him. They showed up unannounced. And judging by the state of things when I arrived unexpectedly last night, they've made themselves far too comfortable in my home. You were here last night. Why didn't you say anything? I saw enough. I replied, my voice hardening slightly. I saw Evelyn standing out on the deck, freezing while the rest of you were inside, laughing it up, drinking my best wine. I heard what Isabella said, what Sophia agreed with. And I saw you, Dan, say nothing. There was a sudden sharp intake of breath on his end. Silence stretched for a beat, thick with unspoken accusations. Dad, it wasn't like that. Evelyn just needed some air. Isabella was just joking around Sophia too. Don't make a big deal out of it. Don't make a big deal out of my wife being treated like dirt in my own house while my son sits by and lets it happen. I let the question hang heavy in the air. More silence than a sputtering defense. Look, I don't know what you think you saw or heard, but you're blowing this way out of proportion. We were just having a nice family evening. Nice for who, Dan? Certainly not for Evelyn. Certainly not for me finding my house overrun and my generosity taken for a ride. Listen, son, I'm on my way to an important meeting. Here's the deal. You, Sophia, and your esteemed in-laws need to pack your bags and be out of my house by noon today. Out by noon? Where are we supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore, Dan. Figure it out, like adults do, but Dad, we have plans. This is Christmas Eve. You can't just kick us out. Watch me, I said, my voice dropping low and cold. Noon, Dan. Be gone. Or my next call is to the sheriff's department to report trespassing. Trespassing, you wouldn't, Dad. His voice cracked a mixture of disbelief and dawning fear. Try me, I said, and hung up the phone. The truck ate up the highway miles. The conversation hadn't been pleasant, but it was necessary. The first shot fired, now to see how they'd react. My house, Dan. My rules. Noon. Be gone. Or my next call is to the sheriff's department to report trespassing. Trespassing. You wouldn't, Dad. His voice cracked a mixture of disbelief and dawning fear. Try me, I said, and hung up the phone. The truck ate up the highway miles. The conversation hadn't been pleasant, but it was necessary. The first shot fired, now to see how they'd react. It didn't take long. Maybe 5 minutes later my phone rang again, Dan's number. I ignored it. It rang again immediately. Ignored it. Then a text message popped up. Dad, please answer. We need to talk about this. You're not being reasonable. Reasonable. After finding my wife in tears and my house invaded, I didn't dignify it with a response. A few more minutes passed. Then the phone rang from an unknown number, likely one of the Rossies. Ignored it. Then Dan called again. This time I answered, keeping my voice devoid of emotion. What part of out by noon was unclear, Dan? Dad, listen, Sophia wants to talk to you. Put her on, I said, steeling myself. There was a fumbling sound, then Sophia's voice, sharp, brittle, already on edge. Richard, what is the meaning of this? Kicking us out like common criminals. Changing locks. It's freezing in here. This is outrageous. Sophia, let me be very clear, I said, my tone matching hers for coldness. That house belongs to me solely. Your welcome, extended only through my son, expired the moment you and your family showed disrespect to my wife and my home. You have until noon to vacate the premises. Disrespect. We were celebrating Christmas. Evelyn was being antisocial. That's her problem, not ours. And this house, well, Dan always said it would basically be ours someday anyway. So he said that, did he? Interesting. Regardless, that someday is not today, and given current circumstances, that someday is looking increasingly unlikely. As for your immediate concerns, noon is the deadline. Oh, and one more thing. I took a certain satisfaction in saying this. The supplementary credit cards issued to you and Dan on my account have been canceled as of 6 a.m. this morning. Any further charges will be declined. Also, the joint account Dan and I had for, quote, household emergencies, unquote, has been closed and the funds transferred solely to me. Consider your financial support officially terminated. What? Sophia shrieked, her voice rising several octaves. Canceled the cards. Closed the account. You can't do that. That's our money too. Dan uses that for business expenses. I need it for groceries for the house. Your house, Sophia. Or my house that you treat like your personal piggy bank. It was never your money. It was my money that I foolishly allowed you both access to. Access that has now been permanently revoked. You miserable old man. How dare you? After everything Dan does for you. After we graciously spend time with your depressing wife. You pull this stunt. You'll regret this, Richard, I swear you will. Dan will never forgive you for this humiliation. And don't think we'll just walk away. We have rights. Dan is your son. This house should be his. We'll see a lawyer. You can't just cut us off. Her voice was trembling with fury, now the polite facade completely shattered, revealing the grasping entitlement underneath. You do that, Sophia, I encouraged her. Talk to any lawyer you like. They'll confirm what I'm telling you. It's my property, my money. Your rights extend only as far as my generosity did. And that generosity has run out. Noon, Sophia. Don't make me involve law enforcement. I hung up, cutting off another spluttering threat. Leaning my head back against the truck's headrest for a moment, I closed my eyes. Rights. Should be his. The sheer audacity. I remembered meeting Sophia for the first time 5, maybe 6 years ago. Pretty, yes, charming, absolutely. But there was something calculating in her eyes, even then, something that appraised everything and everyone, including me, in terms of value. I'd mentioned my unease to Dan once, gently suggesting she seemed a bit focused on material things. Dan had laughed it off. Dad, you're just old-fashioned. Sophia's ambitious, that's all. She knows what she wants. Yeah, I thought grimly. She certainly did. And what she wanted was mine. Noon came and went. I stayed put in my city apartment, having finished my meeting with Harrison, who was already drafting the official notices. My phone remained stubbornly silent after Sophia's outburst. No frantic calls saying they were leaving, no angry texts demanding more time. Silence. Which meant only one thing: they were still there. Defying me. Testing me. Harrison had warned me this might happen. Entitlement runs deep, he'd said, especially when people feel their comfortable lifestyle is threatened. He was right. Around 1 p.m. my phone finally buzzed. It was Dan again. Dad, look, we can't just leave like this. Sophia's mom isn't feeling well, the stress and the cold. It's too much for her. And the kids are upset. It's Christmas Eve, for God's sake. Can't we just talk this out tomorrow like adults? His voice had lost its earlier panic, replaced now with a weary, false reasonableness. So Isabella suddenly feels ill, does she? I asked dryly. Convenient. And you think leaving my house after disrespecting my wife and trying to freeload indefinitely is adult behavior? Dad, you're being completely unfair. You overreacted to a harmless comment. Evelyn is fine, she probably didn't even hear it. And changing the locks, cutting off the cards, that's not how you treat family. We have nowhere else to go right now. Really, Dan? No hotels available on Christmas Eve. No friends you can impose on instead of me. Your in-laws drove here in 2 luxury cars. I assume they can drive back to their own presumably heated home. We were planning on staying the week, Dad. You know that. Plans change when the host withdraws the invitation, I stated simply. Especially when the guests behave like invaders. Look, this is crazy, Dad. Sophia thinks maybe you're not well. All this stress, maybe it's getting to you. You're not thinking clearly. There it was. The opening salvo in the Richards losing his mind campaign. Right on schedule. My thinking is perfectly clear, son, I assure you. Clearer than it has been in years. I see exactly what's been going on. And it stops now. You have 1 more hour, Dan. 1 hour to get everyone and everything out of my house. After that, Harrison initiates eviction proceedings with the sheriff. Don't force my hand. Dad, you can't be serious. Eviction. Police. Over a family misunderstanding. This isn't a misunderstanding, I corrected him sharply. This is trespassing, theft, and profound disrespect. 1 hour. I hung up before he could argue further. The gall of them trying to paint me as the unstable one after their behavior. Trying to use feigned concern as another tool of manipulation. They really thought I was that easily fooled. That old. Later that evening, after Harrison confirmed the official eviction notice had been served electronically and physically posted on my own front door, giving them 24 hours legally, though I doubted they'd respect even that I got a call from a number I didn't recognize immediately. It was Evelyn. Her voice was barely a whisper, strained, hushed, as if she was hiding in a closet. Richard. Dan, Sophia, they won't leave. They say you're being cruel, that you're confused. Isabella keeps saying terrible things about you, about me. Evelyn, calm down, I said, trying to keep my own anger in check. Where are you calling from? The pantry. Sophia took my phone earlier, said I shouldn't bother you while you're having one of your episodes. I had to borrow Victor's when he wasn't looking. Took her phone. Episodes. The manipulation was escalating faster than I thought. What else are they saying? Evelyn, tell me everything. Sophia cornered me in the kitchen after Dan got off the phone with you. Evelyn whispered, her voice trembling. She said you were probably having a breakdown, maybe early dementia. That it runs in your family, doesn't it? A complete lie. My family history was blessedly free of dementia, but Sophia wouldn't know or care. Evelyn continued. She said if I sided with you, I'd end up alone in a nursing home because you wouldn't be able to care for me, and Dan certainly wouldn't take me in after I betrayed him. She said I needed to think about my future, my security, that Dan and her were the future. She implied they could make things very difficult for me financially too if I didn't support them. Tell everyone you've been acting strangely forgetful, paranoid. Isabella was there too, nodding, agreeing, saying how lucky I was that Dan and Sophia were willing to manage things now that you're getting older and less reliable. They want me to sign something, Richard, a statement saying, I'm concerned about your mental state, that I agree Dan should help manage your affairs. My blood ran cold. A statement. They were already trying to build their legal case using Evelyn as their pawn. Evelyn, listen to me very carefully, I said, my voice low and urgent. Do not sign anything, absolutely nothing. Do you understand? Don't let them intimidate you. I know this is hard, but I am handling this. Harrison is handling this. They have no legal right to pressure you, or take your phone, or keep you there. Yes, but Richard, they're so convincing. Sophia cries. Then Isabella yells. Then Dan looks so lost. I don't know what to believe. Believe what you saw, Evelyn, I told her firmly. Believe the woman crying alone in the cold. Believe the laughter from inside. Believe your own gut feeling that told you something was wrong enough to make this secret call. They are using you, Evelyn, just like they used me. Stay strong. Don't sign anything. I will get you out of there soon, I promise. We hung up. The picture was even uglier now. They weren't just defying me, they were actively working to undermine me legally, using psychological warfare against my own wife. This wasn't just about reclaiming a house anymore. This was about saving Evelyn and stopping them before they destroyed everything. The next 24 hours were a tense standoff. I knew Dan must have scrambled trying to access funds. I pictured him calling the credit card companies, pleading, arguing, hitting dead ends, as customer service reps politely informed him the primary account holder, Richard Peterson, had canceled the cards. I imagined him going to the bank branch where we had the joint account, only to be told the account was closed, the funds moved inaccessible to him. He'd probably been furious then, desperate, realizing just how completely dependent he'd become on my money, how little actual control he had over his own financial life. He didn't call me again after that first confrontation, likely licking his wounds, or maybe plotting his next move under Sophia's direction. Sophia, meanwhile, was undoubtedly working the phones. I could almost hear her syrupy voice dripping with faux concern, calling mutual acquaintances, maybe even distant relatives, spinning her tale. Richard's acting so erratically, we're terribly worried. He kicked us out of the lake house on Christmas Eve, can you believe it? Changed the locks, cut off all support without warning. We think the stress, maybe his age, poor Evelyn is beside herself. Planting seeds, twisting the narrative, painting me as the villain, the unstable old man lashing out. She was good at that, making herself the victim, even when she was the aggressor. I heard later from my sister Laura, who'd gotten an earful from Sophia's mother, that the story involved me having some sort of paranoid episode, convinced they were stealing from me. The irony wasn't lost on me. Laura thankfully knew me better than to believe it outright, but the attempt to poison the well was clear. Damage control, social manipulation. Stage 2 of their desperate playbook. The real escalation came late the next day, Christmas Day. Harrison had already filed the official eviction paperwork with the court, ensuring the 24-hour notice was legally binding and the sheriff would enforce it if needed. I was at my apartment reviewing the financial statements again, marking specific charges I wanted Harrison to see when my phone rang. Dan again. But his voice was different this time, colder, laced with a new kind of threat. Dad, Sophia and I spoke to a lawyer this morning. What you're doing isn't just unfair, it might not be entirely legal. My lawyer. Good for you, son. I hope you paid him with your own money this time. Very funny, Dad. Look, the lawyer thinks your behavior is well concerning. Impulsive, erratic, cutting off family, suddenly changing locks, talking about trespassing. He thinks maybe you're not in a position to be making sound financial decisions right now. There it was. The word they'd been circling, incompetent, senile. The legal threat cloaked in fake concern. Is that what your lawyer said, Dan, or is that what Sophia told the lawyer you should say? He thinks we might have grounds to petition for temporary guardianship, Dad. Just to protect your assets, you know. Make sure everything is managed properly until you're feeling more yourself. Guardianship. My own son threatening to strip me of control over my own life. My own money based on lies spun by his manipulative wife. The cold fury I'd felt before intensified, turning into something dangerous. Dan, listen to me very carefully, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. If you or Sophia or any lawyer you hire even whispers the word guardianship again, I will unleash the full force of my legal resources against you. I will expose every dime you've leached off me for the past decade, every lie, every manipulation. I will fight you in court until you have nothing left. Is that understood? He stammered something incoherent, clearly taken aback by my ferocity. And tell your wife the lawyer she consulted better be prepared for a fight he didn't anticipate. Because I have James Harrison. And he eats lawyers like yours for breakfast. I also heard Isabella called Lucy, my neighbor, yesterday, trying to dig up dirt, asking if I'd seemed confused or forgetful lately. Thankfully, Lucy saw right through it, told her I was sharper than ever. But I know what you're trying to do, Dan. Building a fake case, trying to paint me as unfit. It won't work. The phone went silent for a long moment. Then just, Dad, we're just worried about you. Save it, Dan, I snapped, cutting him off. Worry about finding a new place to live by tomorrow morning, because the sheriff will be there at 8 a.m. sharp, and this time there will be no negotiation. I ended the call, my hand shaking slightly, not from fear, but from rage. They had truly crossed the line now. This wasn't just about money or disrespect anymore. This was about my freedom, my autonomy, and I would fight like hell to protect it. Guardianship. The word echoed in my head long after I hung up on Dan, threatening to declare me incompetent. It wasn't just the audacity, it was the calculation behind it. It reminded me of something years ago, just after Dan married Sophia. They were buying their first house, that ridiculously overpriced condo downtown I knew they couldn't afford. Dan came to me hat in hand, needing help with the down payment. Just $20,000, Dad. He'd set a short-term loan until my bonus comes through. I'd hesitated knowing their spending habits, but Sophia had turned on the charm. Oh, Richard, it's our dream home. We'll be so careful with finances. Dan works so hard, he deserves this. Like a fool, I'd written the check. The bonus came and went. The loan was never repaid. When I gently inquired, Dan got defensive. Things are tight, Dad. You know how it is starting out. Sophia had added sweetly. We consider it an early wedding gift, Richard, part of your legacy, helping us build our future. They twisted a loan into a gift, redefined my generosity to fit their narrative. They'd been practicing this manipulation for years, and now they were trying to use the same tactics, claiming concern while plotting to seize control. They saw my assets not as the result of a lifetime's work, but as their rightful inheritance, inconveniently still under my management. But this time I wasn't going to be passive. Harrison's advice was clear: document everything, anticipate their moves. I started immediately. Any incoming calls from Dan Sophia or numbers I didn't recognize, I let go to voicemail first, then listened with a small digital recorder held up to the phone's speaker, creating my own record. Their messages became a predictable mix of pleading, guilt-tripping, and veiled threats, none explicitly mentioning guardianship, again, likely warned off by their lawyer. But the underlying message was clear: cooperate or face consequences. I saved every single one, labeling the files meticulously. Then I called Lucy. "Lucy, glad I caught you. That woman who came asking about me yesterday, Isabella Rossi, Dan's mother-in-law. Could you possibly write down exactly what she asked, what you told her? Just a brief statement, dated and signed, for my lawyer." Lucy didn't hesitate. "Absolutely, Richard. Anything I can do." That woman rubbed me the wrong way, digging for gossip, trying to twist things. "I'll have it ready for you this afternoon." Having a credible witness statement countering their narrative felt crucial. Finally, I scheduled the appointment. Harrison recommended a forensic psychologist specializing in competency evaluations, Dr. Miller, a woman with an impeccable reputation. It felt humiliating, having to prove my own sanity at 70 years old, but I knew it was a necessary shield against their legal maneuvering. The evaluation was thorough, lasting nearly 3 hours. Questions about my memory, financial understanding, decision-making processes, logic puzzles. Dr. Miller was professional, objective, giving nothing away during the session. But as I left her office, I felt a sense of calm. I knew my mind was sharp. I knew I was making rational decisions, even if those decisions were painful. Let them bring their bought and paid for, doctor their fabricated concerns. I would have irrefutable proof from a respected expert testifying to my competence. I spent the rest of the day gathering papers, printing emails, saving voicemails, compiling my own dossier. Financial records proving their dependency. The photos of the mess they'd left at the lake house if needed. Lucy's statement. Dr. Miller's report would follow soon. They thought they were building a case against me. They had no idea I was building an airtight one against them. They wanted war. They were about to get one fought on my terms, with evidence, truth, and the best damned lawyer in the state on my side. Let the sheriff come tomorrow. Let them face the reality of eviction. Their next move, trying to declare me incompetent, would be met with a counter-offensive they never saw coming. 8 a.m. sharp the following morning. The sky was a clear, cold blue, the kind that promises a bitter chill despite the sunshine. I pulled up behind Harrison's sedan just as 2 county sheriff's cruisers arrived, lights off, engines idling. Deputy Miller, a tall man whose father I'd known slightly, and his younger partner, Deputy Chen, got out, looking professional, impassive. Harrison stepped out of his car, adjusting his tie, briefcase in hand. "Ready, Richard?" he asked, his voice calm. "Ready as I'll ever be, Jim," I replied. We walked up the driveway together, the deputies following a few paces behind. The house looked quiet from the outside, deceptively so. No cars were in the driveway. Dan's Lexus and the Rossi's BMWs were gone, suggesting they might have finally left. But I knew Sophia. She wouldn't give up that easily. Harrison knocked firmly on the front door, the sound echoing in the crisp morning air. No answer. He knocked again, louder, announcing James Harrison, attorney at law, present with the sheriff's department to enforce a legal eviction order. Still silence. Deputy Miller stepped forward, trying the doorknob. Locked tight, of course, with my new locks. "Sir, do you have the key, Mr. Peterson?" I stepped forward, inserted the key, turned the deadbolt. The click sounded unnaturally loud. I pushed the door open, revealing the entryway. And there they were. Not gone. Waiting. Sophia stood blocking the entrance to the great room, arms crossed, her face a mask of defiant fury. Behind her, Dan hovered, looking pale and stressed. Isabella and Victor Rossi stood further back near the fireplace, trying to look indignant, but mostly just looking nervous. Even Evelyn was there, standing near the stairs, looking terrified, caught in the middle. Mr. Harrison, Sophia spat, her voice dripping venom. You and your senile client have no right to barge in here. This is a family matter, not a police state. Ma'am, Mr. Harrison replied evenly, holding up the court document. This is an official eviction order signed by Judge Peterson yesterday. You and your family were given 24 hours to vacate the premises owned solely by Mr. Richard Peterson. That time has expired. You are now trespassing. Trespassing, Sophia laughed, a harsh, grating sound. This house belongs to Dan as much as it does to him. He's his son, his only son. Richard is clearly unwell, mentally unstable, making rash decisions. We are here protecting his interests and ours. Ma'am, Deputy Miller interjected, his voice firm but polite. We have a lawful court order. You need to gather your belongings and leave the property immediately. Belongings. Sophia gestured wildly around the room. Everything here is practically ours anyway. We've been living here helping Richard manage things because he's incapable. He locks himself out, changes thermostats, forgets conversations. Just last week, he accused Dan of stealing money that Dan was using for house repairs. Richard himself approved. She pulled out her phone, frantically scrolling. Look, I have emails, texts proving Dan discussed the repairs with him. She shoved the phone towards the deputy. Harrison stepped smoothly between them. Deputy, that is irrelevant to the matter at hand, which is the enforcement of this eviction order. Any claims Mrs. Peterson wishes to make regarding property management or Mr. Peterson's mental state must be addressed through separate legal channels, not by obstructing a lawful eviction. Obstructing? Sophia shrieked. You're throwing a family out onto the street on Christmas Day weekend based on the whims of a confused old man who's probably being manipulated by his gold-digging second wife. Look at her, she pointed a shaking finger at Evelyn, who flinched. Standing there, pretending to be scared. She's probably the one filling his head with lies, trying to cut Dan out of his inheritance. Isabella Rossi chimed in, her voice shrill. That's right. We saw how she looks at Richard's money. This is all her fault, trying to turn a father against his own son. It's disgusting. Sophia turned her fury back to me. You should be ashamed, Richard. After everything Dan has done for you, putting up with your moods, your forgetfulness, trying to keep your life in order. And this is how you repay him. By treating him like a criminal. By siding with that woman over your own blood. She even tried to invoke Martha's memory. What would Martha think seeing you act like this? Seeing you destroy the family she loved? The low blow hit its mark, stirring a fresh wave of anger. But I kept my face impassive. Harrison had warned me not to engage, not to let her provoke me. Deputy Miller looked unimpressed by the dramatics. Ma'am, your personal feelings are noted, but the court order is clear. You need to leave now. We can escort you while you gather essential items. Escort us? Sophia gasped, clutching her chest theatrically. Like common criminals. This is unbelievable. Victor Rossi finally spoke, his voice attempting authority. Officer, surely there's been some mistake. Richard Dan is your son. We are family. Can't we just discuss this reasonably? Mr. Rossi Harrison cut him off crisply. The time for discussion ended yesterday at noon when your family refused to comply with Mr. Peterson's request to leave his private property. The legal process has begun. Compliance is no longer optional. Sophia, seeing her tactics failing, tried one last desperate play. Fine, she snapped. But we're documenting this abuse, this illegal eviction. She raised her phone again, aiming it at me, then the deputies. Everyone will see how you treat your own family, Richard. How you throw seniors out in the cold. Deputy Chen stepped forward, blocking her phone's view. Ma'am, filming law enforcement officers during the execution of their duty can be considered interference. I strongly advise against it. Put the phone away now. Sophia glared but slowly lowered the phone, defeated for the moment, but radiating pure, unadulterated hatred. The air crackled with tension. Their performance hadn't worked. Reality was setting in. They were being kicked out. All eyes turned to Dan. He stood frozen halfway between the entryway where I stood with Harrison and the deputies, and the living room where his wife and her family huddled like cornered animals. He looked physically ill, pale, sweat beading on his forehead, despite the chill I'd set. His gaze flickered nervously from Sophia's furious face to Isabella's pleading one, then to mine, a look of deep, profound shame warring with fear. "Dan, do something," Sophia hissed, grabbing his arm, her nails digging in. Tell your father he can't treat us like this. Tell him about his memory lapses, his confusion." "Yes," Isabella chimed in, her voice regaining some of its earlier whine. "You know your father hasn't been himself lately. Tell the officers. It's for his own good that we're here." He opened his mouth, then closed it again, swallowing hard. "Dad, please," he finally managed, his voice barely audible. "Can't we just slow down? Talk about this later." "There's nothing to talk about later, Dan," I replied, my voice flat, devoid of the anger I felt, just a deep weariness. "Decisions have been made. Actions have consequences." "But Sophia, she didn't mean—" He trailed off, unable even to finish the weak excuse, knowing how hollow it sounded. He looked utterly trapped, paralyzed by the competing demands, by his own weakness. He didn't want to lose the comfortable life Sophia provided, the approval of her family. But the sight of the deputies, the legal documents, the unwavering look in my eyes. It was finally dawning on him that this wasn't a game, wasn't just another family squabble he could smooth over. There were real stakes, real consequences, and he was caught squarely in the middle, having chosen the wrong side. He looked again towards Sophia, then towards me, his expression pleading, desperate for a way out that didn't exist. He had made his bed siding with them, allowing their disrespect, allowing their plans. Now he had to lie in it. Just as Sophia opened her mouth, likely to launch another tirade, or perhaps another fabricated story, a quiet voice cut through the tension. "Enough." We all turned. Evelyn had stepped forward, away from the stairs where she'd been hovering. She no longer looked terrified. Her face was pale, yes, but her eyes held a new strength, a quiet resolve I hadn't seen before, maybe ever. Her hands were steady. "Enough, Sophia," she repeated, her voice gaining volume. "Enough lies." Sophia stared at her mouth agape, momentarily stunned by this unexpected defiance. "What did you say? You stay out of this. You interfering old?" Evelyn ignored her, walking calmly towards the coffee table, where Sophia had left her expensive designer handbag amidst the chaos. Before Sophia could react, Evelyn reached into the unzipped bag and pulled out a small, slim, leather-bound notebook. "This," she said, holding it up, "I think explains everything." Sophia's eyes widened in recognition, then narrowed in pure panic. "Give that back. That's mine. That's private." She lunged for it, but Evelyn stepped back, holding it out of reach. "Private, Sophia. Like your private plans to have Richard declared incompetent. Like your private notes about how much money you could get for this house once it was in Dan's name. Like your private calculations of Richard's assets." Sophia went completely still, her face draining of all color. How do you know about that?" Evelyn opened the notebook, revealing pages filled with Sophia's neat, distinctive handwriting. Lists of Richard's suspected investments, notes on lawyers specializing in elder law calculations, about property values, dates of Dan's requests for money, marked with comments like "easy target" or "needs more pressure," and crucially, dates and details of conversations where Sophia coached Dan on how to manipulate me or complained about my interference. "I found this a few weeks ago," Evelyn explained, her voice steady, now clear, ringing through the silent room. "Sophia left her bag here after one of your visits. I saw the notebook poking out. Curiosity got the better of me, especially after hearing how she spoke to you, Richard, when she thought I wasn't listening. I read it. I read it all. The plan to use a doctor friend to fake a dementia diagnosis. The strategy to isolate Richard, push him into signing over power of attorney. The discussions with Dan, convincing him it was for the good of the family, for the good of their future children. It's all here, in her own words." She held the notebook out towards Harrison. The deputies instinctively moved closer, flanking Sophia, who looked like she might either faint or explode. Dan stared at the notebook, then at Sophia, his face a mask of dawning horror, disbelief slowly hardening into certainty. You wrote this, he whispered, his voice choked. You planned this. Sophia tried to recover, sputtering denials. It's not what it looks like, he's twisting things. She's lying, that old woman. But her panic was palpable, her eyes darting wildly, looking for an escape. Evelyn wasn't finished. And this, she said, pulling a small, folded piece of paper from her cardigan pocket. I found this in the trash yesterday after Sophia threw it out. It's the business card for Dr. Alistair Finch, the doctor. Sophia mentioned in her notes the one she paid $500 cash to write a preliminary report about Richard's supposed senile dementia without ever examining him. I heard her on the phone confirming the payment. The final nail in the coffin. Harrison took the notebook and the business card, his face grim. Mrs. Peterson, he said, addressing Evelyn formally, are you willing to testify to these facts under oath? Yes, Evelyn replied, meeting my eyes for the first time with a look of quiet strength. I am. The game was over. Sophia knew it. The Rossis knew it. And finally, devastatingly, Dan knew it too. Silence descended upon the room, thick, heavy, broken only by Sophia's ragged breathing. The notebook in Harrison's hand felt like a physical weight pinning her down. Her carefully constructed facade crumbled, revealing raw, ugly desperation. Lying bitch! She finally spat, her voice low and trembling, her eyes fixed on Evelyn with pure venom. You were always jealous, always trying to undermine me with Richard. This is your pathetic revenge, isn't it? Making up stories, forging notes. Evelyn didn't flinch, didn't react, just held her gaze steady. Your handwriting, Sophia. Your plans. Your words. No one forged anything. Isabella Rossi stepped forward, hesitantly, placing a trembling hand on Sophia's arm. Sophie, dear, maybe we should just… Shut up, Mom, Sophia shrieked, whirling around to face her parents. This is your fault, too. Always pushing, always wanting more. Telling me Richard owed us something, telling me Dan was weak, needed managing. If it weren't for you. Victor Rossi's face flushed a deep mottled red. How dare you blame us? We came here because you invited us, because you said everything was arranged. We didn't know you were running some crazy scheme faking medical reports. He looked genuinely shocked and ashamed, glancing towards Harrison and the deputies. Officer, we had no idea about any of this. We thought Richard was just being difficult. We'll leave immediately, of course. He grabbed Isabella's arm, trying to steer her towards the door. But Sophia wasn't done. Don't you dare walk away, she screamed, now completely unhinged, tears streaming down her face, mixing with her expensive makeup. You were happy enough to enjoy the free ride, the fancy dinners, the expensive gifts bought with his money. You knew. You all knew he was footing the bill. You just didn't care where it came from. She turned back to me, her expression twisting into a desperate snarl. And you, Richard, you think you're so high and mighty, sitting on your pile of money judging everyone. You owe Dan. You owe him for being a distant father, always working, always putting the company first after Martha died. He deserved this house, this money. He deserved a wife who knew how to get him what he was entitled to. Her voice cracked, the raw entitlement finally laid bare. It wasn't about need, it was about perceived rights, about resentment festering for years, now exploding in ugly accusations. Harrison cleared his throat pointedly, looking at the deputies. I believe we've seen enough. Deputy Miller nodded grimly. Dan hadn't moved. He stood rooted to the spot near the fireplace, staring blankly at Sophia as her meltdown continued. The notebook, Evelyn's testimony, the doctor's business card, it all painted an undeniable picture. He wasn't just complicit through silence or weakness. He'd been actively manipulated, perhaps even subtly encouraged Sophia's scheme, believing her justifications, her narrative that I was the obstacle, his mother the burden. He saw the emails Sophia had shown the deputy, the ones supposedly proving he discussed repairs with me, lies she must have fabricated or twisted. He remembered defending her to me, dismissing my concerns, feeling vaguely resentful that I wasn't more supportive of his wife, his choices. He saw the $20,000 loan, never repaid, reframed as a gift. He saw the canceled credit cards, the closed account, not as an attack, but as a desperate last resort by a father pushed too far. He saw his wife not as the ambitious partner he admired, but as a calculating manipulator who had used his love, his weakness, his desire for a certain lifestyle to orchestrate a fraud against his own father. His face crumpled. A low, guttural sound escaped his throat, a sound of pure anguish. He sank onto the hearth, the brick ledge behind him, his head dropping into his hands, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. The confident businessman, the dutiful husband, disappeared, replaced by the lost boy I hadn't seen in decades, utterly broken by the weight of his own betrayal and the destruction of his world. Deputy Miller stepped forward, addressing Sophia and her parents, who now stood huddled together, looking utterly defeated. "Ma'am, sirs, you need to gather your essential belongings now. You have 15 minutes under escort, then you must leave the property. Any attempt to re-enter will result in immediate arrest for trespassing," Harrison added smoothly. And Mrs. Peterson, referring to Sophia regarding the notebook, the business card, and Mrs. Evelyn Peterson's testimony. "We will be filing a criminal complaint for conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery, and potential elder abuse with the district attorney's office this afternoon. Your lawyer will be contacted." Sophia let out a final choked sob, but said nothing more. The fight had gone out of her, replaced by the cold reality of consequences. Victor and Isabella looked terrified, scrambling to grab purses and jackets. Deputy Chen began escorting them towards the guest rooms, supervising their packing. Deputy Miller remained near Dan, who hadn't moved, still hunched over his head in his hands. "Sir," he said not unkindly, "you need to come with us now. The eviction order includes everyone not listed as the primary resident." Dan slowly lifted his head, his eyes red raw, utterly lost. He looked at me, a silent question, a desperate plea. I met his gaze but offered no comfort, no rescue. This was his mess, his consequence. He finally stood shakily and allowed the deputy to lead him towards the door, his future uncertain, his family shattered. The house fell silent after they left. The slamming doors, the shouting, the choked sobs faded, leaving only the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. The deputies finished their walk-through, ensuring no one was left hiding, confirmed the property was secure, and departed, leaving just Harrison, Evelyn, and me amidst the emotional wreckage. The Rossis, I learned later, drove straight back to the city, their tails between their legs, facing not only public humiliation when the story broke, which Harrison assured me it would, but also potential legal trouble, depending on how deep their involvement in Sophia's scheme went. Sophia faced a maelstrom. Harrison immediately filed the criminal complaints, backed by Evelyn's testimony and the damning notebook. Her reputation was ruined. Her marriage was over. Dan filed for divorce within the week, citing irreconcilable differences and fraud. The expensive condo they couldn't afford was foreclosed on. Drowning in legal fees, stripped of the financial lifeline she'd taken for granted, she was left picking up the pieces of a life built on deceit. Dan, too, faced his own reckoning. While not facing criminal charges initially, Harrison made it clear civil lawsuits to recover the misappropriated funds were coming. He lost his wife, his comfortable lifestyle, the trust and respect of his father, and had to start over, burdened by debt and shame, forced finally to confront the consequences of his choices, his weakness. He moved into a small rented apartment, apparently taking a lower-paying job after word got around his old firm. The price of his betrayal was steep, devastatingly so. Harrison gathered his papers, snapping his briefcase shut. "Richard, I'll be in touch regarding the next steps. Filing the civil suits, recovering what we can. Let me know if you need anything at all. And Mrs. Peterson, he turned to Evelyn, his expression softening slightly. You showed remarkable courage today. Thank you, Jim, I said, shaking his hand. For everything. After he left, Evelyn and I stood awkwardly in the grand entryway, the scene of the morning's drama. The house felt huge, empty, echoing slightly. What now, Richard? She asked quietly, her voice still holding a trace of that newfound strength, but uncertainty lingered in her eyes. Now, I replied, meeting her gaze. Now we clean up. We started not with words, but with actions. Picking up stray cups, putting chairs back in place, gathering discarded wrappers left by the uninvited guests. There was a shared purpose, a quiet understanding in the simple tasks. Later, sitting across from each other at the large kitchen island, sipping tea, a comfortable silence settled between us for the first time in a long while. Thank you, Evelyn, I said, finally breaking the quiet. For what you did today. For telling the truth. She looked down, stirring her tea. I should have spoken up sooner, Richard. I saw what was happening, how Sophia treated you, how Dan just went along. But I was afraid. Afraid of her, afraid of being alone again. I reached across the island, placed my hand over hers. I understand, I said softly. More than you know. She looked up, tears welling in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. No more hiding, Richard. No more secrets. No more letting them walk all over us. A small smile touched my lips. No more, Evelyn. No more. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. And it wasn't a return to how things were. But it was a beginning. A fragile truce built on shared pain and the glimmer of mutual respect rediscovered in the ashes of betrayal. We had a long road ahead, rebuilding trust, redefining our life together. But for the first time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, we could walk it together, honestly, side by side. One of the first calls I made after things settled down was back to James Harrison. Jim, I need to revise my will. He wasn't surprised. We met the following week. I laid out the changes clearly. The bulk of my estate. The house, the investments. The company stock I still held would now go into a trust, benefiting various charities focused on causes Martha and I cared about. Education, skilled trades, programs. Maybe even something supporting families dealing with elder abuse, ironically enough. Evelyn would be comfortably provided for the rest of her life. That was never in question. A separate annuity and lifetime rights to the city apartment, ensuring her independence and security regardless of our future relationship. And Dan. I wrestled with that one. Disinheriting him completely felt too final, too harsh despite everything. But rewarding his betrayal felt impossible. We structured it carefully. He would receive a small percentage, much smaller than before, enough to give him a fresh start perhaps, but not enough to rescue him from the consequences of his own choices. And even that small share was conditional. He'd only receive it 5 years after my passing, and only if he could demonstrate consistent gainful employment and complete financial independence during that time, proving he'd truly learned the value of work responsibility. No more handouts, no more enabling. He wanted to be treated like an adult. Fine. He would face adult responsibilities and adult consequences. Signing the new will felt like closing a painful chapter. It wasn't about revenge. It was about principle. About honoring the lifetime of work Martha and I put in. About ensuring my legacy wasn't squandered by entitlement and greed. The biggest lesson in all this wasn't just about money, though God knows I learned plenty about that. It was about respect. Respect for hard work, respect for boundaries, respect for family ties built on more than just obligation or opportunity, and most importantly, respect for myself. For too long, I'd let my desire for family peace override my own judgment, my own dignity. I'd enabled Dan's dependence, Sophia's manipulation, because it was easier than confrontation. Never again. My peace, my home, my assets were earned, not owed, and they would be protected. Weeks turned into months. Winter thawed, giving way to a tentative spring. The lake house slowly began to feel like home again, not just a fortress I had to defend. Evelyn and I found a new rhythm, quiet, companionable, marked by mutual respect rather than assumption. We talked more honestly than we had in years, acknowledging the hurts, the fears, the mistakes made on both sides. We weren't magically healed, weren't the picture-perfect couple, but we were partners navigating the aftermath together. Sometimes sitting on the deck watching the sunset paint the lake gold, I'd think about Dan. I heard snippets through the grapevine he was working, struggling, paying off debts, living modestly. He hadn't tried to contact me again after that disastrous eviction day. Maybe he was finally growing up the hard way. Maybe not. The path back, if there ever was one, would be long, entirely of his own making. I wouldn't pave it for him this time. One evening, Evelyn brought out 2 mugs of tea, joined me on the deck. "Beautiful night," she said simply. "Yes, it is," I agreed, looking out at the calm water, the familiar silhouette of the pines against the darkening sky. My lake, my house, my peace, earned, protected, and finally, truly mine again. This story serves as a powerful lesson about the hidden costs of enabling financial dependence even within our own families. Richard's generosity born from love was twisted into an expectation, eventually leading to deep betrayal and disrespect. It highlights the critical importance of setting clear boundaries, protecting your own hard-earned security, and recognizing that true family relationships are built on mutual respect, not financial obligation. It's a reminder that it is never too late to reclaim your dignity. Demand respect and make decisions that prioritize your own well-being, even when it involves difficult confrontations with loved ones. What would you have done differently if you were in Richard's shoes? Let us know in the comments.